for coming to our session today. My name is Tina Ying. I'm the Product Marketing Manager in Microsoft Purview, focusing on data security. And I'll let Talhah and Shekhar to introduce themselves.
Hey everyone, my name is Shekhar Palta, and I'm a product lead in Microsoft Purview DLP. Super excited to be here.
Likewise, and I'm Talhah. I'm also a product lead on Insider Risk Management. Great to be here. Thank you so much.
And that's make this session more fun and interactive. So I'll start by asking you some questions. How many of you, or raise your hand if your organization use some sort of DLP controls to secure data? Okay, keep your hands up. And then keep your hands up if you like your DLP solution. Ouch, ouch, okay. I think that's why you come to this session today, that we're gonna talk about beyond traditional DLP, how comprehensive and AI-powered data security can help you to more effectively protect your sensitive data. So in today's session, we are going to talk about some challenge we observe in securing data, and we will actually point out the elephant in the room. What are the 5 myths of data loss prevention? And Shekhar and Talhah, they actually will do some live product demo to show you how you can address those 5 challenges. And we will close out the session with some best practices and resources. So when we think about data security or the solution you use to secure data, a lot of the time DLP come up. And then, however, when we think about data security risk, it becomes very dynamic in today's modern work environment. You need to protect all kinds of sensitive data, including PII, business data, operational data. Also, data security incidents could be caused by external actor, or it could also be insider who maliciously or inadvertently exfiltrating data from the company. And not to mention, your sensitive data locate and being accessed and used in multiple locations, including AI application. And so that's why DLP solution becomes so important and critical. However, we are seeing that organizations are still struggle with that. A traditional and content-heavy DLP solution is not enough to address this dynamic risk. So based on our recent research, we are seeing that organizations are experiencing 59 data security incidents in the past 12 months, with 20% of them being quite severe. Data security incident can happen anytime, anywhere, and it's no longer just a headline news. It's actually very common in organizations. Among those incidents, 74% of them actually say that they have their business data exposed, including intellectual property, source code, or financial agreements. And then as organizations are adopting AI application at an unprecedented rate, we are also hearing that security and privacy become the #1 risk that security team need to join force with the business to help to have a more secure AI usage. With that, we need to make DLP better. However, we do hear some challenge from organizations, and then we call it 5 myths of DLP. And in today's session, we will actually go through it one by one and show you how you can address them. And before we dive into the myth, I do want to set some context for you, because we are going to mention some of other products that complement DLP to make it better. So when we think about data loss prevention, it is about preventing sensitive data loss from risky user activities. So there are 2 aspects of it. The first aspect is the data, and second one is the user. And so you will see us to start to talk about information protection, because it provides more than 300 classifiers to help you to identify where your sensitive data locate. And then once you identify the sensitive data, you can have your DLP controls to protect your sensitive data. The second aspect of it is the user, because data doesn't move itself. It's people who use and interact with the data. And Insider Risk Management provides more than 100 indicators and machine learning models to help you to detect those critical insider risks. Once you detect those high-risk users, you will be able to set up a DLP controls, like blocking them from exfiltrating the data, while allowing other users to work as usual. So when all the solutions work together, you have better and more adaptive protection around your sensitive data. And so we are going to actually touch on all this concept in the product live demo and then while we are addressing the 5 challenges. So the first challenge is actually about DLP policy tend to be very fragmented, especially if you're using some third-party DLP solution. You might need to create one DLP solution for your endpoint, another one for your cloud apps, and another one for your email, et cetera. And not to mention, you have users located in different regions, in different departments. They might subject to different compliance requirements. So it's very complicated for the DLP admin to manage all this complexity and metrics. So I'm going to invite Shekhar to show you how you can address and manage your DLP policy more effectively.
Thank you, Tina. So Microsoft Purview DLP, if you can go to the next slide. Microsoft Purview DLP has made significant progress in the last several years. We already offer you the ability to create a single unified policy and apply it across your entire data estate. You can also now start ring fencing your DLP administration duties. For instance, you can choose to designate a DLP admin for Germany who's responsible for creating policies only for German employees, or designate a US DLP SOC analyst who's responsible for looking at DLP alerts and incidents for only employees within the US. Next, we already support a wide variety of file types, and we are constantly expanding the file types we support across your entire data estate. We support more than 100 file types on Exchange today and more than 80 on SharePoint. Third, the endpoint DLP protection that we offer extends to just beyond Windows. It can also be extended to devices running on Mac OS or devices running on virtualized environments like Citrix, Amazon Workspaces, or Azure Virtual Desktop. We're also natively built into the Microsoft Edge browser, and the same consistent protection can also be extended to other browsers like Chrome and Firefox. Today, I'm really excited to announce that we are making available endpoint DLP capability for devices running on ARM processors as well. With that, let me quickly jump into a demo environment to show you how easy it is to create a DLP policy. All right, so here I'm logged into my demo environment as a German DLP admin, and I've created a policy to protect intellectual property as well as PII information. So we'll walk through this policy. So here, after you name the policy and provide a description, the next step is to start assigning admin units. Now, admin units is a logical group of users that can be defined in Microsoft Entra. For instance, all of your employees within Germany, or all of your employees within the HR department or the finance department. Now remember, I am a German DLP admin, and I should not be allowed to create a policy for anyone apart from German users. This is easy to set up for a global admin. All they have to do is go to Microsoft Entra and start mapping the right admin units against me, which is a scoped admin. So now when I log into and try to create a policy, when I click on add or remove admin units, as you can see, I only see the admin units that are corresponding to employees within Germany. Even if I do not choose any of these admin units and choose to go ahead with the full directory of users for this policy will still be scoped only to all German employees and not beyond that. With that, so the next step here is to start defining which all locations do you want to apply this policy to. As you can see, this one single policy can actually be applied across all of your M365 and non-M365 locations. Once you define which locations do you want to apply this policy to, the next step is to start creating your rules. Now here, there are 2 rules created. We'll step into a rule to see what are the key components of your DLP rule. So the first component is your detection criteria. So as you can see over here, I'm using a combination of different sensitive information types. So here, I'm using regular expression-based sensitive information types that are available out of the box, like Germany, identity card number, tax identification number, etc., along with some built-in trainable classifiers, like tax documents, IP documents. The next step after you define your detection criteria is to start defining the restrictive actions you want to put in place once the detection criteria is met. And I have the ability to start defining different restrictive actions for different locations. So here you can see for my M365 locations, I am like SharePoint, OneDrive, Exchange, and Teams, I'm choosing to block as soon as I detect this content being used. For my endpoint devices, I have the ability to start defining different restriction levels for different activities happening on the endpoint device. For instance, for my browser activities, both uploading of a file that contains sensitive content or pasting of sensitive content into some websites on the browser, I'm choosing block as my restriction level. Furthermore, for copy to clipboard, I'm choosing to only audit without any restrictive action for the end users, but for print, I'm choosing to block with the ability for end user to override if they have a business justification. Now, once you define your restrictive action, the next component is to start defining your admin actions. What kind of emails, what kind of notifications do you want to send to your end users if a match happens? Or what kind of policy tips do you want to show? Or you can also choose to turn on a DLP alert once a match happens. So once you define all of your admin actions, you can hit save, define any more rules as required, and then click next. The next step is to put your policy, deploy your policy, right? And you have the option to deploy your policy in test mode along with simulation, which we'll look at as a part of the demo that we are doing today. Or you can choose to turn the policy on immediately in enforce mode. Boom, that's it. That's how easy it is to create your DLP policy. With that, I'll hand it back to Tina.
Thank you, Shekhar. So the myth number 2 here is about striking the balance between security and productivities. And it's a constant struggle. So when you overprotect data, you might set up a lot of this block control that Shekhar just mentioned about that could block legitimate business activities that users want to perform. So we see from research more than 90% of the business users, they complain about it, that they think the security control really impact their productivity. On the other hand, if you underprotect your data, let's say you only set up your DLP policy in audit mode because you have fear of the business escalation towards you, which is not a secret. A lot of organizations might be doing it. And if you do that, then your sensitive data, like confidential information, could easily be exfiltrated and put your organization at a very vulnerable position. So Talhah, can you show us some of the capability that can help to optimize the balance between security and productivity?
Yes. Oh, no, yeah, I need that actually, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Super excited to be here talking about adaptive protection. So let me kind of set this up a little bit. Your workforce is dynamic. What that means is your data security risks are dynamic. So wouldn't it be great if there's one policy that can continuously adapt and tailor specific controls to individual risks as they arise? That is adaptive protection. And let me give you that with a quick example. So imagine 3 different users in your organization. You've got Deborah. She submitted her resignation. It's not a cause for concern. We assume positive intent. But we want to use that as an opportunity to remind Deborah about her confidentiality obligation as she leaves the company. So what does that mean? Maybe if she decides to send an email with a confidential file, we give her a policy tip reminding her of that confidentiality obligation. Alex, on the other hand, moderate risk. There's a little bit more going on with Alex. So what kind of experience we want him to have? As an example, if he tries to send confidential information over Teams, maybe he gets blocked. But he has an option to override that block if he provides a sufficient justification. Last, Sylvia. A bit more sketchy, a bit more risky. So she, for example, tries to print a confidential document. Maybe the experience we want her to have is blocked. Not even an option to override that. one policy that adapts across the board like that. That's what we're going to show you. So let me switch over to the PC. So the first step in this is to understand that risk. Tina put it really well. Data doesn't move itself, people move data. So we got to be able to look out for this risky activity and use that to build a risk level. So what I'm showing you here is a quick sneak peek at Insider Risk Management Alert. You get the breadth of information around the reason that cause this alert to fire, anomaly models that are going off, sequential stuff, all that stuff. But the key thing I want to draw your attention to is actually this thing right in the middle, which is the triggering event. So an HR connector imported the resignation date for this user. Now recall those 3 examples that I gave you earlier. Wouldn't it be great if I can take that resignation event and bind that to a risk level and say, because of that, this user is, let's say, elevated risk level, as an example. You could do that now. So if I go back over to Insider Risk Management, I'm going to click on Adaptive Protection. This is a capability that's in market today. And if I go down to the risk levels, you'll see the same 3 risk levels that I talked about in my example: elevated, moderate, and minor. And I can go into edit any one of those levels, and I can make the alignment as basic as if there's a high risk alert, the user is an elevated risk level. Medium risk alert, moderate risk level, so on and so forth. Or I can do mix and match, and I can combine and fine tune exactly based on the indicators that I want and the conditions I want met. And that's what you see here. You see a bunch of indicators selected. This is just a subset of over 100 indicators that we have. You'll see a bunch of sequence activity. Sequence is by far the most advanced and the most high fidelity detector that we have. And I'll talk to you more about sequences in a demo later on. These are selected. But the newest thing we're announcing as of yesterday is the ability to bring in this HR event, termination or resignation, as an event for a condition for adaptive protection. So once that's in, I click confirm, and now that's in there. Right? And I can do the same thing on the moderate risk level, the minor risk level, and I can build out my conditions the way I want to build them out. Great. Insider risk is going to town. It's finding out the different users. It's tailoring their specific activity to specific risk levels. What happens now on the DLP side? Well, let me show you. So I've got another DLP policy that I started. Now recall the example that I gave, right? I want something to happen on Exchange Mail. I want something to happen on Teams. And I want something to happen on the endpoint device if you print something. One policy, 3 different applications. I click next, and I've already got rules set up. I've got 3 different rules that are set up. One rule is for my block with elevated risk. The other one's for a warn with an override for moderate, and the last is just an audit with a tooltip. Now the conditions are already set, but the conditions are static conditions. Now these are using the breadth of static capabilities that you have inside of DLP today, everything from the sit matches, the classifiers, the machinery models, all the stuff that Shekhar talked about. You can use that today to build those conditions, but they're content focused. What if I want to take these rules and elevate it up to make it adaptive and also take into account the user risk levels, combining the 2 together? Here's how simple that is. I click on edit, exact same rule, and I scroll down and I say add a condition, and I see one already there for user risk level for adaptive protection. I click on that, and it's just going to ask me, what would you like to bind this to? Simple. I'll say elevated, because this is the elevated rule. I save that, and that condition's in. I do the exact same thing on the moderate side, add condition, adaptive protection level, moderate, save, and the exact same thing I can do now, lastly, on the minor risk level. Go over, add condition, risk level, minor, hit save. That's it. This is not a new solution. This is not a new endpoint you have to deploy. This is a capability in the core of IRM and DLP. This is the power of Purview data security. Now to show you what the experience looks like on the end user, let me bring Shekhar back up and show you what that looks like.
Thank you, Talhah. All right, everyone, let's have some fun in this demo. I'm going to assume the role of these 3 users one by one, and I'll show you what experience will they see as they try to exfiltrate some sensitive content. So first, I'm going to be Deborah. Now, Deborah has submitted her resignation. There's no risky activity. She's not working on a sensitive project. So Insider Risk Management has labeled her as a minor risk user. Now, let's see what happens when Deborah tries to send some sensitive content to Christy. All right, so here I'm going to compose an email and I'm going to send it to Christy, and I'm going to send some sensitive tented information about a sensitive project, Project Obsidian, right? And I'm going to compose the subject, details about my project. I'm also going to compose the email as discussed. Here are the details, and I'm going to be polite and say thanks. All right, did you see how quickly, as I was composing the message, a policy tip appeared which is integrated seamlessly into the Outlook app, which informs Deborah that this action, this email, conflicts with the organization policy. Now remember, Deborah is a minor risk user. We do not want to hinder her productivity. She can still click on send and send the email out. Now, let's contrast that. I'm now going to assume the role of Alex. Now, Alex, on the other hand, has already, he has already submitted his resignation. He's working on a sensitive project, but there is no sensitive activity that has been detected against Alex. Now, let's see what happens when Alex tries to send the same kind of sensitive information over Teams this time to Christy. So here, I'm sending the same sensitive information about Project Obsidian. Let's see what happens. Boom. Talhah, did you catch how fast that was?
I didn't unlock the phone in time, man. I'm sorry.
This is how fast Teams DLP is. So let's see what happens. So Alex learns that this message was blocked. He can click on what can I do and see that this message was blocked due to some sensitive information in the message. He also sees that there are certain override options that are available. So he chooses to leverage that, provide a business justification, and hit confirm, and boom, this message is sent out instantly. Now let's contrast that with Sylvia. I'm going to be Sylvia now. Now, Sylvia has submitted her resignation. She is working on a sensitive project, and she also has been involved in certain risky activity, and IRM has labeled her as an elevated risk user. Now, let's see what happens when Sylvia tries to print a document, this time on an endpoint device, which is related to Project Obsidian. So I'll go here, hit print. Boom. She sees a very familiar Windows notification that informs her that this action is not allowed, and she does not even have any override options over here. So here you saw that there are 3 different users with 3 different risk levels, 3 different experiences across 3 different apps, but one single adaptive policy. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the power of adaptive protection.
Thank you, Shekhar. I have to say, it's a lot of courage for them to do this live demo. Did you see how quickly that Teams DLP was? Like 1 second, and he blocked the message. So super powerful. To just recap here, we talk about adaptive protection. You will be able to assign user with different risk level, and you tailor DLP control accordingly. And now you will be able to add departing employees as a condition to define your risk level. And lastly, and the most importantly, not just we bring all the Purview solutions together, they are all natively integrated into the Microsoft ecosystem. So it's working at where users work daily in the Microsoft apps, in the Windows endpoint device, without any agent required on those Windows devices. So you can effectively educate, influence, and nudge users on their proper data handling decision. So that leads us to the myth number 3, which is DLP insights can be siloed. So as a data security admin, you might see a user triggering multiple DLP alerts, but you still don't know how to handle these alerts because you don't have enough context. It could be a compromised account. It could be a malicious insider. It could also be just a user who tried to work with the confidential information. And also, not to mention, if those activities happen on the endpoint, a lot of the time you don't even know what other files got impacted. So Talhah, the question back to you again. How can DLP admin make a more informed decision when they see alerts coming in?
Thank you, Tina. Context is everything. Context could be the difference between taking an alert and potentially dismissing it as benign to taking that same alert and escalating that for potential law enforcement escalation. Let me show you exactly what I mean with a quick demo. Yeah, so I'm a data security admin. I come into my Contoso beloved Purview portal. I see a bunch of alerts that are fired, and I see one suspiciously for a file called vacationpics.zip. We've seen that before, right? I mean, vacationpics.zip, myfamilyphotos.zip, getting exfiltrated out. What's in it? It's the context that matters. Now, I dig into that. I want to get a bit more context, and I'll keep filling up the time so that this thing actually loads. The demo gods hopefully show this stuff. The newest thing that we're announcing today as part of this, information loads up, it's a low severity alert. That's the most important thing you want to take into account as part of this view. So Sarah downloaded or uploaded vacationpics.zip to, in this case, a cloud storage device. Now the newest capability we're announcing as of yesterday is this tab on the top right known as User Activity Summary. What that does is for the user associated with that alert, Sarah in this case, if the permissions are available to that data security admin, the system will go into insider risk management and pull out a curated, correlated, and I forgot the last one. I have tripped on this so much and I messed it up again in production. A curated, correlated, and chronologically ordered timeline of potentially risky activity. Yeah. Got it. So if I scroll down, you'll see all those activities. Now, the most interesting thing I want to draw your attention to is what we call a sequence detector, and that's this guy here. A sequence detector is a related set of activities that help to form an idea of an intent for the user. And the best way to describe that is actually with an example. So in this case, we know vacationpics.zip is involved. But what was the background of that? Well, this shows you that. Sarah actually went to a SharePoint site, downgraded the sensitivity labels of 54 files. She then downloaded those files to an endpoint device. She then archived that into vacationpics.zip, and then she uploaded that to cloud storage. Look at that. That context, that, ladies and gentlemen, is the difference between somebody looking at that alert, vacationpics.zip, assume positive intent, dismiss the alert, I'm all good, to now, oh my God, there's something going on. Not just that, there's an intent to obfuscate your tracks. You downgraded the labels. We can show you that. That power is in market today. Now, if you're used to triaging these alerts in Defender, the same capability is available there. I've already got the alert open. This is about vacationpics.zip. You'll see the panel on the right-hand side give you all the information on the device, so on and so forth. And it's telling you the user in this case has an elevated risk level in insider risk management. Remember, the DLP alert is low severity. The user is an elevated risk level. And if you click on that user, we'll give you that same beautiful, curated, correlated, and chronologically ordered timeline of risk events. I like to think that clap was for me not bungling up that statement, but we'll go with this guy. And the same, by the way, the exact same sequence event shows up here too. And if you have the permission, if you click on Insider Risk Management, we'll take you over to Insider Risk Management for that user, so it's no longer a curated list of events. You'll see a lot more, including, for example, the user visiting potentially harmful websites. You can see that as well inside of Insider Risk Management. As long as you have the permission, we'll respect all that. Last thing that I want to call out, in fact, I think this, yeah, so browsing to unallowed domains, for example. We'll even show you that if that's something that is set up for that specific user. Last, wouldn't it be great just to round this whole thing out if we can actually show you vacationpics.zip? We can. Very excited to announce, and this is again something we announced yesterday, Microsoft Managed Storage for endpoint file evidence. So now your SOC admins or your data security admins can also, with one click, download, and they'll take the file as well, and we'll present that to you as evidence too. That is the context in Purview.
Thank you, Talhah. I feel everyone now will be super alert when they see something about vacation photos or family photos. So to just recap here, we have adaptive protection bringing DLP and IRM together to respond to potential risk. And now at the detection level, we are also bringing IRM insights into the DLP incident detected in your environment. So from detection to response, you have user context all along. And it's not just in Purview, it's also in Defender as well. And lastly, it's easier for you to now see the endpoint file that's got impacted in a certain incident. With that, I'm going to jump to myth number 4, which is a really common one. Alerts tend to be very noisy, that data security admin need to find the true risk within all the false positives. And a lot of the time, when admin try to fine-tune the policy to receive high-fidelity alerts, you might add a condition, remove another condition, but then you need to wait for at least a day to see how that policy works in your production environments. And if it still doesn't work as expected, then you will need to fine-tune another time. So you can see it's a very time-consuming process, and it demands a very steep learning curve to really fine-tune your policy to an optimal situation. So Shekhar has some exciting capability to show you how we can make this process less painful.
Great. Thank you, Tina. So there are several strategies to tackle this challenge. One, Microsoft offers you the ability to choose from a variety of advanced classification techniques like exact data match, OCR, trainable classifiers, both built in as well as create your own, and fingerprinting techniques to accurately and precisely determine sensitive content through your entire digital estate. Next, I'm really excited to announce the availability of policy tuning recommendations for DLP and IRM. With ever-increasing data sources and data types, organizations are really worried about, hey, what kind of data protection risk exists within my data estate? What do I prioritize first for my data protection strategy? This is where policy tuning recommendations comes into the picture, which brings you the much required visibility into your data protection risks as well as precise recommendations in order to mitigate them. Third, I'm also really excited to announce the availability of simulation mode, which allows you to put your policies in an isolated container, which allows you to accurately assess the impact of those policies before you take them to your production users. Now with that, let me quickly jump into my demo environment to show you these awesome capabilities. All right. So first, we'll look at DLP tuning recommendations. So once you turn on DLP analytics for your tenant, it allows Microsoft to go through billions of signals across your entire tenant to come up with really powerful insights, really powerful ML-driven insights for your data protection risks, as well as really precise recommendations in order to mitigate them. Now, these insights will appear as 2 cards on your DLP overview page, and these are refreshed weekly for you. So the first card on the left allows you to understand what kind of changes do you want to bring to your existing policies in order to improve the accuracy and fidelity as well as reduce alert noise. So here on the first card, you can see that there are, in fact, let me talk about the second card first. So here you can see that based on the existing policies, there is a recommendation which will bring down your current matches for a certain policy from 212 to 162, which is a phenomenal 23% reduction in alert noise. So you can click on View Detection Details over here. You can actually see that there's a policy which exists by the name of SITS Policy 11, and the recommendation over here is to add 3 new classifiers, which are built-in classifiers, built-in trainable classifiers, in addition to the detection criteria that you already have for your policy. From here on, you can choose to view the policy settings, or with a single click on Update Policy, you can directly deploy these recommended changes for your existing policy. So here you saw with this card, the second card on the right, that you have the ability to start optimizing your current protection net. Now let's see what happens about, what can we do about your, expanding your current protection net. This is where the first card on the left comes into the picture. So here you can see that there are certain sharing activities that is leading to sensitive information being exfiltrated out externally. You can click on view detection details over here and learn that there are 645 users involved in exfiltrating some kind of sensitive content across a number of files. And it also shows you what kind of sensitive info types have been detected across those exfiltration activities. So here you will see that there is a recommendation to turn on a new policy which is targeted specifically at those sensitive information types through a built-in classifier again, which is finance in this case. From here, you can click on view policy settings, view the details of the changes that we are expecting you to do along with the locations, and then with a single click on create policy, boom, you're ready to deploy this policy in your tenant. So here you saw with these two insights, you have the ability to do both. Optimize your current protection net as well as start expanding your current protection net. Now let's jump into the demo for simulation mode. So if you remember, simulation mode provides you the ability to put your policies in an isolated container to accurately assess the impact of those policies before you take them to your production users. So here, I already have a policy that has been running in simulation for the last few days in my tenant, and I'm now going to view the simulation report for this policy. As this loads, you'll be able to see that I'll be able to accurately determine what kind of matches as well as how many sensitive types or how many files has this policy already scanned till now. So you can see over here that this policy has already scanned more than 43,000 files across different locations, and it has so far found 184 matches. And you can see the breakup of these matches across different locations. Now from here, the next question you'll have is, hey, is my detection criteria accurate? Do I need to fine-tune my detection criteria? And you can do just that by clicking on items for review. And you can actually, for every single one of your 184 matches, you'll be able to view a match summary which tells you what was the content in the file or the email that matched the detection criteria. You can also click on source to actually view the entire email or the file in question. Now, this empowers you to take a decision on whether your detection criteria is accurate or you further need to fine-tune it. Third, you can click on alerts to see what kind of alerts will be generated once this policy is deployed. From here on, you have the ability to edit the policy further, fine-tune your existing criteria, or even restart the simulation. Or with a single click on turn the policy on, you're ready to deploy your policy in enforce mode in your production environment. With that, I'll pass it back to Tina.
Thank you, Shekhar. So now Shekhar showed you how you can fine-tune your policy to receive fewer and more high-fidelity alerts. How about when it comes to review each alert? DLP admin or data security admin still receive a lot of alerts daily. And then just imagine if you spend 5 minutes to review each alert, that could be easily 5 hours gone if you have 60 alerts to review per day. And that's what the admin is suffering nowadays, that they can only get to around 60% of the alerts on a daily basis. So Talhah, how can we help to shorten the time the admin need to spend on reviewing each alert?
Awesome, thank you. By the way, it's a sigh of relief right now. Those are 4 live demos. So just appreciate everybody. Appreciate the demo, guys. That went super, super well. Super excited. This one you're gonna see, it's a good, clean. We're gonna bring it home. So let's go over this. So it's about Copilot. I don't know if you guys have heard this thing called Copilot and the power of AI. That's what we're bringing to help you drive easier and quicker and faster triage, and investigation experiences. So we're very, very excited to announce private preview of alert summarization for DLP alerts and alert summarization for insider risk management alerts. But there's one key thing I want to focus in on as I show you what this actually looks like. Now, what you see here is inside of DLP, if you're in the Purview portal, you look at a DLP alert, you'll have an option to spin up a natural language summary of that alert. It'll give you all the relevant information related to the policy match, the content that's involved, the user that's involved, everything. But the key bit is the following, and Charlie and Vasu put it really well in the keynote earlier today. This is not just a chatbot. This is your personal digital AI assistant. It has to be able to give you the right insight so you can make that informed decision in time. What you see is that this is a low severity alert. You'll see all the information on the DLP alert. The very last sentence in this alert is the key bit. Again, going back to that context. Additionally, Jordan Minke is marked as a medium risk in insider risk management. If you have the permission, we honor RBAC, we'll honor the privacy controls. If that data security admin that's spinning up that Copilot summary for the DLP alert, it'll go into insider risk management, fetch all the context and give it to you so you understand not just about that DLP alert, but the user behind that DLP alert. We'll bring that to you too. And then finally, exact same is available in insider risk management alert. So when you're looking at the insider risk management alert, all the relevant context gets pulled out, Copilot summarizes it and gives it to you. In this case, for example, you'll see all the relevant dates, the resignation date, when the exfiltration activity happened. So as you need to dig in deeper, you have the right sort of anchor points that you can use to go do that. With that, Tina, back over to you.
Thank you, Talhah. Very exciting. Security Copilot coming into Microsoft Purview. So we will let you know about the public preview and GA. They are on public roadmap. Now those are in private preview. So to sum up, in this session today, we covered the 5 myths of DLP. We also covered the 5 facts of how Microsoft is providing simple, integrated, and intelligent set of data security solutions to help you to protect your data more effectively. It's not just coming from Microsoft. Based on the most recent Gartner report on market guide for DLP, they talk about the same thing. Gartner predict that 70% of the CISO, they will actually consolidate their approach to address data exfiltration and insider risk. And if you read the report, by the way, it's available on our website. You can read the reprint there, that they actually recommend organizations to adopt DLP solution that has advanced classification service and integrate with insider risk management. And that's what Microsoft Purview provides, that we have a set of solutions and the information protection insider risk management complement DLP to help you make your DLP strategy better and stronger. And all of these solutions are built on one unified platform. They share one data map, share one classification service, the intensive audit log that we provide, and also the streamlined policy engine that we have. And all of it, layer of control together to help you to fortify data security. And if you're excited to get started, here are some one-step insights you can get from Microsoft Purview portal. And note that there's no agent required, and also all this recommended action doesn't impact on your end user. So you can actually visit our data classification overview page to understand more about what type of sensitive data you have in your organization. And remember, user context is super important here. So turn on insider risk analytics today. It doesn't show you any personal information. It just shows you how many percentage of your user are exfiltrating data and what are top exfiltration channel the user are exfiltrating data from. And lastly, adaptive protection, super cool. You can actually turn on adaptive protection in one click, and then we can set up a policy for you in test mode. And it doesn't send anything or impact on end user. It just gives you some high fidelity alerts that consider both of your content and your user context. So right after this session, if you haven't turned on any of that, get started now so you can start to receive those actionable insights. Lastly, these are the resources slide summarizing some of the very good data security demo assets, and then we also have very good announcement coming from DLP and IRM as well. You can read more in our blog posts. And I also want to highlight the 2 on-demand sessions that you see on the slide. So all the data security that you saw today, some of them, they now cover multi-cloud, including structured and unstructured data as well. So you can learn more about multi-cloud capability in this on-demand session. Our data classification has another on-demand session. We definitely didn't do justice for this service. It's super powerful. So if you want to learn more about information protection and data classification, definitely watch this on-demand session as well. And so I want to invite Talhah and Shekhar to come up front to thank everyone to join our session today.